This is community, familiar faces. Cool. Well, everybody, I'll wait probably like one more minute while folks pour in, and I'll do a quick overview. Then we'll do some intros, and then we'll get into the call. So thank you everybody for showing up today, and we've been really looking forward to hosting this community conversation with Cal Poly Humboldt, and knowing that they are the first PEP program approved under the new PEP regulations. And so congratulations to Cal Poly first and foremost. I know since then there's been about 5 more approved in the last month. So um, looking forward to see Department of Ed approve some more soon. So yeah, I'll just give a quick overview of the call, and we'll go into intro. So, to everybody who's in attendance first, thank you for making time. My name is Ved Price. I'm the director here at the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison. And we really wanted to host this call because this is the first PEP program approved under the Pell regulations. And we know that they have a wealth of knowledge and experience that came from going through that process. And we know that there's a lot of new stakeholders in the field, a lot of new people in the field. The field has ballooned and expanded rapidly over the last year. And so with that being said, we know that, not everybody has access to the historical knowledge from working in this field for years. And we want to try to make information and knowledge accessible to those who have been doing this work, but also those who are new to this work and new to the field, and bring folks into the community and let people see kind of what goes into standing up a PEP program, what it was like going through the process, what it's like to work with academic leadership or institutional leadership, and then what it's like to work with tertiary partners that have been, already established as well. So before we move into intros, I'll just do a couple quick plugs. For those who haven't seen our newsletter or any of our communications, we are doing the National Conference on Higher Education in Prison, Spring 2025. It'll be April 10th and 11th in New Orleans, and we'll have one day of pre-conference, so that'll happen on April 9th, and so there'll be a little pre-conference activities, but again, the conference itself will be April 10th and 11th. Right now, for the pre-conference day on the 9th, we're trying to schedule and coordinate some prison visits with PEP programs where folks can meet with students and get more proximate to the work as well. So we're really working to coordinate that. The other thing that I'll plug really quick is our Incarcerated Scholars Conference, which is happening October 29th and 30th this year. And this will be kind of showcasing scholarly work and practices done by incarcerated students across the US. So hope to see folks there as well. Cool. So we'll now move into introductions, and I will pass it off to our California colleagues to do a quick round robin of introductions, and then we'll move into the conversation. Really quick, sorry. As we're doing the conversation, if you have questions, feel free to drop those into the chat. If you'd like to do a quick introduction of who you are, what your affiliation is, what your title is, you can drop that in the chat as well, so folks kind of know who is in attendance. So with that being said, I will pass it to Steve to maybe get the intros kicked off, and then you can pass it to the next person.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, folks, for joining us. It's really heartwarming to see such a large group of folks who are interested in prison education. We at Humboldt have really enjoyed the ride to get to this point. So my role on campus is I'm the director of the Transformative and Restorative Education Center, which houses our efforts in Pelican Bay State Prison with a bachelor's program, the co-curricular side of things, and we have other members of our campus who are part of that here today. Our office also houses Project Rebound, which serves formerly incarcerated students getting into and succeeding at the university. And it also serves as the location for a youth empowerment course and advocacy group in the local juvenile hall. And so that's my role here at Humboldt. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Jen Capps.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jen Capps, and I am the Provost, Vice President of Academic Affairs at Cal Poly Humboldt, and grateful to be here with you all. And I'll get an opportunity in a moment to offer a quick few more remarks before I turn it over to the broader panel. But With that, can I turn it over to Tony to introduce himself?
Thanks, Jen. Hello, everyone. Like Steve said, this is amazing to see so many faces on here. I'm just happy to share space with y'all. My name is Tony Wallen Sato. I am the prison education coordinator at Long Beach State Project Rebound, but worked many years with Mark, Mac, Steve, and Tori when I was working with Project Rebound at Humboldt. I'm also a lecturer in the Critical Race, Gender, Sexuality Studies Department at Cal Poly Humboldt and a teaching artist at Pelican Bay State Prison through the William James Association. I co-chair the Boundless Freedom Project, which is we facilitate Buddhist services and mindfulness courses inside 12 California state prisons and Rikers Island. And I provide a mindfulness and creative writing course in the Orange County Youth Leadership Academy, the juvenile hall down here. 13, I was arrested. The last time I was arrested at 23, and education has really changed my life. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to my good friend, Mark Taylor.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you for allowing us to share this space with you all today. My name is Mark Taylor. I'm a First District Appellate Project board member, a teaching artist for Prison Arts Collective, and I'm the coordinator for Cal Poly Humboldt's Project Rebound. My role is to support the students who are in Pelican Bay State Prison, to support our formerly incarcerated students on campus, and to support students in Humboldt County Juvenile Hall. And what Steve was saying, we run an empowerment course down there where we support our youth. I'm also formerly incarcerated, spent 21 and a half years in prison and earned my first 6 associate's degrees while I was incarcerated. And when I came home, I graduated from this university with my bachelor's and master's of social work. It's an honor to share this space and to talk about what we're doing here at Cal Poly Humboldt. And I will pass it to Dr. Schnurr.
Hello, folks. I'm Maxwell Schnurr, and I'm the chair of the communication department at Cal Poly Humboldt. And I have the honor to work and collaborate with all these folks to help support and build the Bachelor of Arts program at Pelican Bay State Prison. And in particular, I help to coordinate a lot of the academic side of things to make sure that the classes, the teachers, and the pieces happen there. And I want to pass it over to Provost Capps to introduce themselves.
You bet. Are we introducing Tori as part of our team as well? I feel like we need to acknowledge Tori before I kick off remarks because it's all about collaboration and partnership. So Tori, can I ask you to introduce yourself before I say a few words? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Great to see everyone here. My name is Tori Eagles. I am the College of the Redwoods Pelican Bay Scholars Program Manager, and I oversee the sister college to Humboldt State University that serves individuals that currently reside in the northern part of California. And so that includes individuals inside of Pelican Bay and outside. So longstanding close connections between the two college institutions. And I was a part of the initial group that started offering classes at Pelican Bay State Prison, and now partnering with Cal Poly in their current ventures.
Awesome. Thank you, Tori. With that, I get the great privilege of kicking us off, and I am going to be brief because I have a wonderful panel of experts that are going to present and offer you some information. But so grateful that all of you are here today, and grateful to kick this off in partnership with my great colleagues at Cal Poly Humboldt and the College of the Redwoods. My professional background, just to give you just a little sliver, is, I came into higher education. I sought to be a faculty member and then sort of rise through administration, but to be able to address kind of systems work and identify the strengths of young people that I always say young people that did bad things and help to educate the system on why sort of the approaches to incarceration were not great, and that we needed to do much more of a rehabilitative sort of lens. So if that gives you a little window into perhaps why there might have been a little bit of success at our campus, or maybe gave us a little bit of an edge in the fact that a lot of my life's work professionally and then in higher ed as a faculty member was in this field. And so I think what really helped pave the way for us to have some successes was certainly having a leader that was literate in understanding the criminal justice system and then how that intersects with education. And we had a lot of really good people, Tony and Mark for quite a long time before Steve and Maxwell got into the game. We're working really, really hard and hitting some barriers with regard to being able to sell to other leadership on our campus why we should go forward and what the value proposition really is for prison education programs. And so making sure that you have somebody in a leadership role that is at the table, that is making those high-level decisions and is literate with respect to what the positive value proposition is super important. And so you have to ask yourself, does it align with the mission or purpose of the university? And for us, it absolutely did. One of our priorities is about access, creating access to education and being transformative with respect to future generations. And so for us, I always say we like to define ourselves as an institution by who we include and not who we exclude. And so that really fits into what our purpose is. And so you have to ask yourself, does it fit, at that high level? And then be able to have somebody that can really talk, as many of you all probably know, about the value of prison education and its impact on community safety, and how it may interrupt the sort of intergenerational incarceration. And so those pieces are super important. We had lots of bumps in the road, and we're going to talk about those bumps in the road and how we resolve them. But really where we sort of found our way and things started to smooth out was very much when we stopped pushing sort of our agenda of what we wanted to do and really took a deep breath and really focused on what the people who are incarcerated at Pelican Bay really wanted with respect to education, what kind of degree they wanted, and really started by centering the needs of the students. The collaboration and the relationship, I stand here, or I sit here, I guess, in my Zoom room, saying there's absolutely no way we would have been successful hard stop without the partnership with College of the Redwoods. We are lockstep in partnership with them, and they're in a way have been sort of dragging us along, but they piloted a lot of things. We had a lot of lessons learned, and we are just lockstep with them. So having a partner that you can learn from and learn those sort of, mistakes and those pieces along the way. It goes without saying, having a relationship with CDCR and a positive one is super important. Being incredibly patient along the way is also super important. As you can imagine, I always say the two biggest bureaucracies I think that exist are the correctional system and higher ed. And so when you push those two things together and try to create things like memorandums of understanding and contracts, things slow down quite a bit. And so having to ensure that we go slow to go fast and piloting a lot of programs is really important. Lastly, just being incredibly flexible. And so our team is going to go through some of these details and some specific examples, but I can't impress upon you all enough. There are a lot of people that will say, as you all probably have experienced in your careers, that they support prison education until it comes down to actually having to fight for that program, having to hire people that were formerly incarcerated, having to fund the program, having to do the things that are required to make a program successful. And so it's really, really important to help to educate those folks and have that leader that does understand those components. And if you don't have the benefit of having, a leader that has a background in, criminal justice, juvenile justice, and higher ed, then how do you bring on those advocates that care and have seats at those tables? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panel. I think Taved maybe who's going to facilitate the panel, but I'm happy to answer additional questions as they come up. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Capps. And yeah, I already have questions too. I have questions about institutional budgets and how you made the money conversation, the money argument. But yeah, let's save that. So yeah, I kind of want to open it up to the panel for this first question. And Steve, I know we talked a little bit about this, and Tony as well, but helping a program or a prospective program determine if they should pursue the PEP application, and what it means to be prepared, right? And what are some of the nuances that you all experienced when going through that process? I feel like that information is would be valuable, and it's something that I've heard from a lot of folks in the field too. So maybe if you can speak about um, program preparedness, and again some of the nuances that go into that PEP application process that might not be on paper, but you kind of surface through going through it. So Steve, Tony, I know we spoke a little bit about it, but anybody feel free to hop in on that.
Tony, why don't you start, and then we'll sort of back and forth it.
Can you repeat the last question, like the last sentence that you said? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I said a mouthful, but basically program preparedness, how a program can determine, if they should pursue a PEP application, what are some things they need to have in place before pursuing that, and before going into that process, and then maybe some of the lessons learned or some of the nuance that came through that process that you might not have expected just from reading what needed to be done.
Yeah. I was on a vacation, and me, Max, and Steve were working on a grant that was due. And I was like, only for you two, right? This was a DOJ grant that was for specifically this. And it was like, I think there's a lot to go into these PEP processes. And while I was on vacation in the desert, working on this grant till midnight with these two, like there's a lot to go into it, and you have to be ready, is, the quick and dirty of it. It's not an easy process. And I think also you can't do it alone. If you think you're gonna like be the only person on campus who's like, hey, I have this, like, I want to do this. I'm wholeheartedly into doing it. Even if your intentions are right, if you don't have any support behind you, it's just gonna fail. And we'll get into community buy-in later, but I think that's really a big process. Is you cannot do this alone. And I've talked with other folks, other campuses who have tried and just hit all these barriers and roadblocks, and then it just kind of disintegrated. So there's a lot. It's almost like a second, as other duties in your job assignment. This is that as other duties apply, right? And I think also too, what is your relationship with the carceral state? What is your relationship with that carceral space, right? Are you working with, are you yourself formerly incarcerated or working with them? Or what is I think you really have to, ask yourself, why am I pursuing this in a prison? And what's my relationship with that carceral institution or as a whole, right? Because I think that the reflection will tell a lot too, and it will help motivate and guide you through those really hard processes when you hit those barriers and roadblocks. I'll pass it over to Steve.
And I think to sort of keep on that thread, our team is composed of people with and without lived experience, with and without incarceration experience. And I think really you can't do one without the other. And so the PEP process is going to be driven by the Department of Ed's requirement, right? Which is to make sure you have an academically rich program that you're offering, that you have an oversight entity, someone in the prison or a person, a position in the prison who's going to provide that support to grease those wheels, if you will. But really, you also need someone from the academic side who's going to ensure that the academic component of your proposal is sound and solid, and the folks ready to do it. And I think, I don't know if this is a requirement. Tony alluded to, the most terrifying job description as other duties as assigned. And I don't think that this is a position, this is a task to take on if it's everybody's third and fourth priority. This is literally the majority of my job. And so our university was able to make the commitment in a full-time position to usher this process through. And I think that's really important because it becomes the thing that you do so that all of these different entities that you're working with can get the attention and the detail that they deserve. So that's how I would answer that, at least from the PEP perspective, the application perspective. I've been fortunate to already have meetings with different universities who are interested in doing it, kind of getting down into the nuts and bolts. And I'm happy to keep doing that. I'm making a public offer here. I know there's 4 screens on my Zoom worth of people, but having someone to demystify that process, I think, is pretty helpful. One of our meetings, someone discovered in the last 10 minutes of an hour-and-a-half meeting that they had to have accreditation for the prison as an accredited educational site. They found this out after they had already filled out the application, but they didn't have that component to it. And I just would hate for anyone else to experience that.
Thanks, Steve. And I even know you mentioned something about like finding out in the middle of the process, like you had to get the measurements of the classrooms, right? Like the dimensions or something like this, correct? Something like that happened. I don't recall clearly, but
Accreditation does a site visit, and they want to see that you're teaching in a classroom and not a closet, I guess. And those things you think, well, that's common sense. But I'm going to ask you to consider letting common sense go for this process and just dive into it and be ready to pivot and go up to the prison with a tape measure to make sure that your classroom is a legitimate space. That's the kind of detail that you're going to experience. The SIP code for the major that you offer. Some of our campuses, that person, may be hard to find who knows the code, but Department of Ed is going to require that level of detail.
Can I add one thing to this? Just I put something in the chat, but having financial aid office really drives a lot of this too. As you can imagine, they're the experts and responsible for the Pell piece of things for the campus broadly. And so having an ally there that is willing to work with you, because it's quite, as you all know, it's a pretty intense process and you need them to help you. Unless you all are experts in financial aid, we sure weren't. So just recognizing you have an ally there. And then the other part, what Steve is talking about accreditation, for our accreditation, the prison had to be accredited as a separate location. So it's like a separate campus for us. And again, that's not a short runway. So you do have to bring somebody out, open up that opportunity to invite an accreditor into the prison, which, depending on who that person is, they may have an understanding or comfort with prisons and they may not. So it turned out well for us, but that's a whole piece that delayed us actually quite a bit. So just noting that. Sorry to jump in on you, Steve, but thought that would be helpful.
So if anybody else wants to jump in on that, I do have another question, but happy to see if anybody else has any follow-up comments. Cool. All right. So my next question is kind of in response to, Georgia State University, their prison education program was they stopped it. They shut it down. There's still talks that and hopefully that can be resolved and that isn't the case. But with that, this next question is also for folks on the panel around how to navigate the conversations with leadership at the academic institution. What are some of the talking points? What are some of the key points? What are some of maybe the fears or apprehensions? And how can you address that stuff in a way that doesn't end in a PEP program being shut down or removed, right? And so, that's kind of the gist of it. But I think, Dr. Capps, I'm sure you can speak to this too. And then also folks who, have had to work with leadership and have those conversations, maybe talking about what it's like to navigate that as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. There's, I in some ways protect the rest of the team from a lot of the blocking that I need to do. There is a lot of blocking that has to happen to educate people in human resources, in upper leadership, but even faculty and students, truthfully, to understand why we're committing resources and why this is so important. And as you all know, there's a lot of myths out there about prison education or just people who are incarcerated and what they should and shouldn't have and those types of things. And what I always say, to me, it's fairly apolitical with respect to, I believe everybody wants community safety. I don't think anybody doesn't want to feel safe, right? And so being able to explain that offering prison education programs ultimately enhance community safety is really the key to that. And I would run into a lot of barriers and people questioning you know, what we were doing and why we were pursuing this, why I was, you know, utilizing resources. And as soon as I said that, they were like, oh, yeah, that's true. You're right. Or correct some of that misinformation that kind of gets out there. So that's the biggest piece, but being able to shut that down before it becomes and spirals, because everybody has a story about a time that they didn't, you know, they have an opinion about it. But to me, that's the biggest thing. But I'll let others jump in if they'd like to share.
Yeah, I'll jump in and follow that. Also, thank you for all the work you do. We know that you do behind the scenes, right, that we aren't aware of. That's true, right? Community leadership, right, in this work. I would say that for us, you know, I think on the ground level, we had formerly incarcerated students already on campus. Like when I got to Humboldt in 2018, right, we were building a formerly incarcerated students club. We were doing a bunch of work in the community. We were demystifying those myths that they have on us for those of us who have been to prison, right, and or have been incarcerated. And I think that work, you know, I feel like we're really lucky in California because a lot of that support starts first on campus through Project Rebound, Underground Scholars, Rising Scholars, as opposed to what I've seen in other states is there's a prison program or a HEP program first, and then they try to build a support on campus, right? Because I mean, you know, majority of us are coming home, right? And you know, this work is making sure that we all come home, but like we're coming home, and right, there needs to be support in the community and at that level. And I think, right, just having that for a few years, having formerly incarcerated students and events on campus, talking with leaders, talking with faculty, you know, going to all these like special events in both in the prison, the jail, the juvenile hall. I think that really just kind of got rid of a lot of the stigmas. You know, I mean, there's still obviously they're still there, but I think on the ground level of like, oh, you know, if someone found out that Project Rebound was on campus while they're already there, there's no argument like, oh, there's already been formerly incarcerated students here for years, and you know, nothing happened. You're like, you're fine, right? You probably had a more enriching classroom because of it, right? And so I think having that community already in place and demystifying on campus really helped out with, you know, allowing folks to be on board with, oh, well, let's start something inside. And then, you know, because when they come home, they'll have a space on campus to already, you know, enter into.
So that's actually a perfect segue to the next question, and this will be, you know, to everybody, but I'd love this pull in Tori and Mark around this because I think Tony, you mentioned it's people want to come in and just set up a PEP program and think that that's how to do it. And I think there is like this administrative operations, like paperwork process of it. But I think what you spoke to, which I think gets overlooked a lot, is like the culture work that needs to be done too. And that's where partnerships come in and community, you know, engagement come in. So, you know, as related to that, you know, can you kind of just talk about the importance of establishing or the importance of relationships with folks who already have established, who have an established presence with DOC or as a PEP and some of the work that you've done with College of the Redwoods as well?
I could talk about that a little bit. So College of the Redwoods has, you know, they built an infrastructure within Pelican Bay State Prison, which supports the academics, and they do it very well, right? So they started with one class. Now I believe they have like 40 sections, and they have hundreds of graduates, right? So when we were thinking about offering a bachelor's degree in there, one of the first people we talked to was Tori Eagles, because she played a primary role in assembling and executing that program, and sat down and learned from her and the other staff and faculty who were supporting that program to see what they were successful at and what their challenges were. And I think that was incredibly important. In addition to that, it was touched on earlier, you do have to have a solid core team of individuals with specific skill sets and things they bring to the table, like having Jen Capps, the provost, be able to support us at the higher echelon of the college is super important. Having Steve Ladwig, who has over 30 years of experience navigating this university, critically important. Having Dr. Schnurr, who's the chair of the communications department, and that's the first degree that we're offering, is critically important. Having Tony's lived experience is critically important. So being able to assemble that core team that can collaborate with all the entities needed to make this program happen is important. But what's most important is the partnership you have with the student, right? The person who's sitting in the chair, who's getting the education. So on the front end of this, the whole team went out to Pelican Bay and talked to, I think it was around 25 people who had graduated from College of the Redwoods to see if this is something that they wanted at their prison, to have access to a bachelor's degree program, and would they embrace that and enroll. And the overwhelming consensus was yes, they do want this. And that played a key role in the next steps we took, which was you definitely have to have a meaningful relationship with the prison administrators who are going to play key roles in helping you support this program. So we talked to the warden, we talked to the public information officer, we talked to the captain on the facility where the program would actually be at. We talked to the sergeants, we talked to the people who process you in when you're coming into the institution. And sometimes it's just letting them know why you're here. But sometimes it's just having a conversation that doesn't have anything to do with education, kind of building that relationship with that person to where they're comfortable with you when you show up. You don't get resistance from them. I'll give you a case in point. Like anytime we go out to facility B, where the program is currently housed, we talk to the officer who's responsible for calling all our guys out to make sure they get there in a timely fashion. And one time there was a lockdown. Protocol says that no one should be able to come out. But since we've had a good relationship with the staff there, they got our students out. We were able to have class, and they were able to get the instruction they needed for that day. And that's why these relationships are important. You have to be very intentional about those relationships, and they will bear fruit, because you do need support from multiple different entities, from the university to the student, to the prison administrators, to the team, to make sure that it functions properly. So you have to be intentional about that. Thank you.
Can I slide in with just a little bit of support here? And I think one of the crucial things from my perspective as a professor is coming back to the student need, and what is the actual need. And I'm flashback to Steve and Maxwell on a road trip to Sacramento with Tori, where we sat at the table with College of the Redwoods and humbled ourselves to try to listen and engage and try to figure out where we could fit in. And I remember, I think I saw Rebecca Silbert pop into the space, but I remember trying, kind of bum rushing Rebecca at the food line to ask, where can we get in? Where do we actually get in to fit in? And the explanation that what's really needed was a BA program at a level 4 yard, at the highest security level, and that the students needed particular kinds of classes. And so thinking again, if you're thinking about the PEP program, coming back to what classes are actually going to transfer, how do you serve those students to make sure they can get their degree? Trying to think about a program that's going to have long-term longevity, long past when you work at the institution, building structures as you make the pieces happen that are really coming back to student need, educational need, exceptional pedagogy. What teachers are the best that you really want in the space? And, from our perspective, never losing those things, even if it means sometimes having to come back around and redirect in a moment of difficulty. And I was hoping, is it okay to share just a couple quick pictures from yesterday's? Are we in the share space? Is that cool? And I'll be reasonably swift, but this is us welcoming the new cohort. Are y'all seeing the picture?
Yep.
Perfect. This is us welcoming the new cohort from of students who are joining the 4-year BA program in communication in Pelican Bay. And these are all accepted college juniors at our university who get as much of the same support as possible. And I think there's Mark, of course, letting them know the key pieces, dropping some science on them and making those parts. As I change the page, are you still seeing the picture?
Yep.
It is not going to be a full slideshow, but that's a student with an AA degree with a full official admit letter from Cal Poly Humboldt in his hands,
Hmm.
right? Getting the realness to the student for the need of what it means, and affirming the actual anchor of the hard work that they've already put in to kind of come back, right? To remember those parts. And you can see, there's a lot of joy in the room when you get those letters. And there's Provost Capps, right? Coming back to that key piece. Mr. Avalos, who I've had class with and I love on that left-hand side, and Provost Capps standing there is an incredible joy, right? What does it mean to have your provost show up and drive 2 hours out of a busy schedule in order to hand admit letters to students who are incarcerated, and the joy in their face to understand the weight of what that means? And so I think the part that I would love to kind of come back to. And if I have one other part to answer Ved's question, I think I'll say, recruit the most phenomenal faculty you possibly can and go as hard as you can, and then write it all down. This, you're like in a river right now and it is flushing past you. And if you don't write down process guides, if you don't keep, well, I'll just say hypothetically, 97 pages of specific detailed notes on all your meetings and conversations, which is how long our Google Doc is, then I think you're going to miss some of the key stuff. So come back to the students. Thanks for letting me add my 2 cents there.
Thank you so much, Max. It's also, this partnership piece. I mean, Mark, you touched on some really important pieces too around the partnerships and the relationships. I feel like I talk to PEP programs all the time, and they talk about, like, again, the administrative stuff and all that stuff, and then they go into practice and they realize, oh, I have to like establish some good standing with these folks because they have a lot of other priorities outside of education in this facility. So those relationships go a long way. I mean, I've heard folks just bring them some coffee and some donuts sometimes, just like these little things. I mean, it sounds funny, but like that might be the difference between some folks getting released to go to class and not, depending on how somebody's feeling that day or depending on how busy somebody is and their willingness to go out of their way to do something. So like that stuff really does go a long way. I'm not going to say who does that, but it's a good strategy. One other thing that I just really appreciated when talking to Steve and Tony in the beginning was their acknowledgement of the role of community colleges in general and how they've kind of been organically serving this population for decades by virtue of just access issues and other issues. And so understanding and respecting the infrastructure and the setup that community colleges already have, and they've already been oriented towards this population. So they're closer to the culture in many ways for that reason. And so, I mean, it was really nice to see you all acknowledge that, recognize that, and see how that would be a necessary relationship to establish. So I know we're coming up a little bit on time. I want folks to have time to come off mute, ask questions. I'm sure there are some really like pragmatic nuts and bolts questions that folks might want to ask. Things about best practices for folks who are new to the space, things that we might want to know about, how to do a good PEP program, how to do it well, and how to sustain it is the biggest thing. I think people can stand stuff up, but how to sustain it so it doesn't go under in 2 years. These are some of the bigger questions. So I'll pause and let some of the folks in the audience ask questions, and then
Can you let Tori like get a little?
Yeah, Tori,
like,
sorry. I'm sorry, Tori.
Hey, we've been talking about community colleges. She might be like, nah, they've been doing it wrong this whole time. Let me.
Oh, I almost made it through, Tony.
I thought you were trying to duck. I was like, I don't know if she wants to come on or not. So
I just patiently wait for my turn. I'm happy to just kind of work in the background doing things, but thank you for the opportunity. In this work, it's all about the creating relationships and that communication between all parties. I'm a bit of an organizer in that I keep the boys in line as far as props to Maxwell mentioning the importance of developing handbooks and documenting things along the way, because I believe that was some advice that I gave a few years ago when we first started working together. So College of the Redwoods has been going on to Pelican Bay since 2015. We've awarded over 233 degrees to our students there. So it's a natural fit whenever Cal Poly was initiating the conversations with wanting to go out there that we would work together, knowing that we're greater as a team, the more voices and helping hands that we have along the way. I have a couple of recommendations as far as folks, if you're considering partnering with your community college that I found to be greatly helpful in our partnership. Number one would be to identify invested and communicative stakeholders. Keyword being invested and communicative, because it's important for the heart and enthusiasm, as we were touching on earlier, to have those folks that are really excited to go in and do the hard stuff, because for the most part, none of it's fun. You know, the coffee before we go in, that sort of stuff can be kind of fun, but the actual real work and ensuring that the things that need to get done can be a bit grueling and daunting. And it's great to have those people that are going to be there and be excited to be a part of it. You also need that support and sustainability for the long term, because this isn't really a project where people are going to be able to hop in and out in the newness. It's kind of like that, especially when you're initiating a program, that historical understanding and knowledge is going to be really important. Number two would be to establish clear, defined objectives. And there's a caveat to that, which is that it's everything that you do is grounded in the student goals and needs. Three would be to identify shared desired outcomes between the different colleges and programs. So whenever you're doing things, to make sure that it's not impacting the other program in a negative way. Really great example that I have for that is whenever I'm contacting the prison before each term begins and letting them know what the academic calendar for College of the Redwoods is, I'm also providing them that information for Cal Poly. Granted, Steve probably may have done that, but it's important to me to ensure that they're acknowledging that there's two partners that are going in and providing college campus, because sometimes the translation of information amongst the prison institution is just college. And they don't understand that we're very unique in the holidays that we're going to celebrate. If we're canceling a class, that it doesn't mean that everyone's involved in that, all those nuances that can really make life tough for your partner. Number four would be don't avoid the tough conversations, especially if you have good longstanding relationships with your partners. Sometimes it's just tough conversations that need to happen, and it doesn't mean that it needs to be emotional. It doesn't need to be something negative, but you do need to lean into those in order to work through and find solutions. And number five would be to make sure to take time to celebrate collaboratively along the way, for sure.
Thank you, Tori. I wanted to call on you earlier and I was like, she didn't say anything. I don't know. She'd be like, no. So thank you for that. I took some notes here too. So I know we have some questions in the Q&A function of the chat that we can go through. And then also I'd like to say that if folks feel comfortable coming on camera and off mute, we intentionally have this community conversation in this format where it's not webinar format, but where everybody's kind of in the same room, so to say. So feel free to be communal, ask questions as you'd like. And then if not, we can also start poking through the questions in the Q&A.
William Freeman, you had your hand up. I don't know if you're still want to ask that question. I just wanted to recognize that.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate Polycal, man. Shout out to y'all doing the work and being at the far end of the continuum and telling everybody catch up. My question is, how are you guys are you being intentional about considering the racial demographics of the prison and surrounding areas that most folks will return to when you make up your class? Does that make sense? I didn't ask it that way in the Q&A. I think it was, how are you tracking enrollment equity across race, and does the classroom reflect racial demographics within the prison?
I can answer part of that.
Okay,
So yes, yes, the classroom does reflect the general population of the facility where the bachelor's degree program is currently being offered. I'm going to tell you guys something you probably already know. Most of the people in Pelican Bay State Prison are from the BIPOC community, right? And that is reflected in our class. In addition to that, we feel it's very important for faculty, for students to see a reflection of themselves in the faculty who are coming in there, right? So and this will be our first full semester, right? There will be 4 faculty. One of those faculty is Roberto Monaco, who is from South America, and he teaches CRGS, and he has some lived experience. So the students will definitely be able to relate to him and the other 3 phenomenal faculty. But we are super intentional about making sure that there's racial equity within the program and also in the people who are supporting it, in addition to making sure that formerly incarcerated people are being hired in meaningful ways. Like my job is a full-time position here at Cal Poly Humboldt that comes with all the benefits that a state employee at this university gets. And that's important that we are hiring people into these positions, because I think that's how you clearly demonstrate that your program really believes in what it's offering, right? We will still, or if you have lived experience, you're going to see some barriers. But I will say the individuals on this team make sure that we remove them barriers for our students and the people who support the program. So we're super intentional about that. Hopefully I answered your question, brother. If not, I can add some more.
No, thank you. That was good. Thank you.
All right, I'll start to poke through the Q&A, and then if anybody wants to come on, you can just raise your hand or come off mute. Treat it like we're all in person here. This next question is from Eddie Fordham. In Florida, some incarcerated students are treated as out of state for residency cost. Has your HEP in California faced the same residency barriers, and how did you approach it? In Florida, we got a bill passed to remove that barrier, but Governor DeSantis vetoed it. So questions about residency or any hurdles that you've encountered around that?
I can just say without question that all of our students are considered California residents. Not an issue for us, thankfully.
I think there's barriers for those of us who've been formerly incarcerated, and then there's like barriers from other states on top of that. I feel like in Florida is one of them that I hear a lot of friends of mine in Florida. But I didn't hear about y'all getting out of state. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How do we change that? What's policy? What's up? Like, I'm sorry to hear that. But also I read your congratulations. First, welcome home, brother. Like, hey, Florida State, awesome. I want to ask you, is there any support for you on campus? Are there any formerly incarcerated student programs in Florida or FSU? Just curious.
Currently, I'm not aware of any, but I'm starting next month and I'm already kind of laying out sort of a vision on paper as to getting a support group for formerly incarcerated college students and those that are justice involved. As far as, oh, and by the way, I thought that was really cool what you said earlier, Koji, about having that group where you're on campus and everything. I think it's so important to have that grassroots support. Florida is a little bit slower than the rest of the nation, I think, when it comes to this space. I see a lot of heads nodding. That's like the residency bill. We got it passed in the legislature last session with both Republicans and Democrats. We had a bill in the House and we had a bill in the Senate, and it was beautiful to see everybody working together. A lot of hard work by Senator Osgood and Representative Edmonds on that bill. Then, like I said, it went up to the governor's office and it got vetoed. So we're just back to square one on it. However, we built a lot of that grassroots foundation in that first round. And we think that we're just going to build more support as we go back to the drawing board this legislative session with it. And hopefully we'll get further along with it, but we are here to stay. We're not going anywhere. Those with lived experience and our formerly incarcerated college graduates, We have a voice, and I can see it in all of your faces today and in this conversation. And I appreciate every one of you. I also appreciate Humboldt for recognizing Mark and others and giving them those positions in spite of their past, because they saw your future potential. So thank you everyone for your input today. And I'm learning so much, and I got a whole bunch of notes here.
Always good to see you, Eddie. I remember spending time with you in Florida out there, Everglades. So good to see you.
Yep. Thank you.
I know we only have we have a few more questions. We'll try to squeeze them in here and do what we can to be mindful of time. So the next question is from an anonymous participant. The question is, does a distance learning or online program need to be approved as a new HLC approved location? If so, what does that process look like? Does this on-ground inspection need to occur before the Department of Ed application step process? So I don't think you all are doing distance learning, but if you have any insights there.
Yeah, I mean, I can, we're accredited by WASC, but HLC is similar, and I believe they do. I mean, I don't know that they have to kind of be boots on the ground, but I do definitely think it has to be approved and accredited and go through a process. I don't think it's as significance if it's a virtual or correspondence type of program. I don't believe it has to go through the same level of review as accrediting like a whole campus, but it certainly does have to go through a process of review. Looks like somebody put something up in the chat. Or go ahead, James. It sounds like you had something.
Yeah, thank you. So Ashland University and essentially all of our programming is done through distance education. And it's as rigorous as if it was a face-to-face. And the order of events are, you get the first milestone approval by the DOCs, and then proceed to get the accreditor. And as Jen says, we're with HLC. And the very next thing is to be PEP approved from the Department of Education on your first 2 sites for one program. So even if you have multiple programs at a site, they're only going to look at one. Once you receive that approval, then HLC can come in and do the site for the first 2 programs, actually go on site. And then once that's done, then you can go approve other sites or other programs within a site. So it's actually a little bit of back and forth, but it's as rigorous as a face-to-face. And of course, the HLC, all of the things aside, or the accreditor, is validating the integrity and robustness, if you will, of the distance education program as much as they would an on-campus program.
And if I could just add, this isn't like on the nuts and bolts, but like we were in talks of like distance learning with High Desert, like but because it's just so far. It's more isolated than Pelican Bay, and like the CDCR themselves said no. So if you haven't started that conversation yet, there might be an institution who might say, we won't accept a distance learning, or we will only accept, like maybe it'll be the opposite. So, just to save a headache, if you haven't talked to the institution themselves first, because they're the ones who are going to give you the green light. And, at the end of the day, what they say can it be allowed is going to be the one to be allowed. Hopefully that helps.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tony. And also thanks, James, from over there from Ashland. You said Ashland?
Yeah, Ashland University in Ashland, Ohio.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks for attending.
Absolutely.
We only have 3 minutes left. I'm going to try to just randomly pick a question and we'll go from there. And then we'll probably wrap up because I want to be mindful of everyone's time and attendance. So I think this one is a good one. I get this a lot. And there's not a lot of resources out there for this. There are some, but what is your orientation process for the new professors coming into the facility to instruct? I think this is a really important one.
We've been having ongoing conversations with our incoming prospective faculty. They all take more than one trip, usually to the prison, to get the experience of walking through the gates, navigating security, and kind of checking themselves for their emotional place as they navigate something that was definitely built architecturally to kind of undercut and destroy you. And then we also have a fairly extensive handbook that I'll admit was primarily anchored by some of the work that Tori Eagles and her team over at College of the Redwoods had contributed. So a faculty handbook. Then we also partner with College of the Redwoods. All of our faculty are going to attend the College of the Redwoods faculty training because they do it well and did it before us. We'll have some individualized instruction, a breakout session, as well as some dedicated ongoing support through the semester. But we're really trying to build some structure as we do the faculty introductions.
And I would just add the real, I think the real business end of that training is the scenarios that Tori and her team have come up with that are specifically and intentionally designed to give faculty a sense of how teaching in a prison is different than teaching at the Arcata campus at our home campus. And those scenarios then offer rich discussion. Several hours of the training are dedicated to each scenario to help teachers sort of unpack what they're getting into and how to respond.
And we also, in addition to that, have monthly trainings and on different subjects from different specialists in our university, and then also weekly communications on a variety of subjects as well.
And we also, on the front end, when the faculty are first going into the prison, we have a debrief afterwards. Usually they go in with the team and we have a good 2-hour drive back to debrief and see what came up for that faculty member to make sure it's a good fit.
And I know it's one, but real quick too, also for College of Redwoods, also last year, I don't know if they'll keep doing it maybe, but had a formerly incarcerated group come up and they taught for an hour of like ins and outs of like what to expect and, having, obviously having like the staff, the lived experience marks up there, but like having more folks come in and talk about like different scenarios that you wouldn't know unless you've been inside, right? And so I think that was like the feedback I think was really helpful.
Yeah, so I think the key in all of that is that for Cal Poly and Humboldt, we partner up on a lot of things, and there's going to be so many different experiences that and perspectives and platforms that the information needs to be delivered through. So there's a campus page for ongoing communication, monthly meetings, a kickoff before each semester, but none of this duplicates the training that faculty typically receive just as a part of the larger convocation and ongoing professional development through the college. It's things that are specific to working with the incarcerated population.
Well, thank you. I wish we could keep this conversation going. I know there's a lot more questions in the Q&A, and I know there's some in the audience as well. As we wrap up, I want to just say first, thank you to Cal Poly and College of the Redwoods for showing up today and sharing some of your experiences with the field, some of this relatively new knowledge, and also sharing some of the nuance of what goes into standing up a program in a way that's quality. Really want to just plug one piece because I know that people are asking about where can we find resources on the field of higher education in prison and how can we share resources. So I just want to plug that there's a platform called rchep.org. I put it in the chat. It's the Resource Community for Higher Education in Prison. That's the acronym, but the acronym is rchep.org. And it's a platform that we stood up last fall, and it's open source, crowdsourced. So you can upload documents, you can share documents, whether those are redacted MOUs or staff training handbooks, anything, transfer policies, any resource that you name. We're really populating that with resources and trying to centralize it so people can access the stuff. So feel free to send stuff there, or you can also email resources to us and we'll upload them to that platform. You don't have to sign up to access anything in that platform as well. So it's just free, open source. Feel free to log in and check that out. We'll be continuing to develop that as the field evolves. So with that being said, thank you, Cal Poly and College of the Redwoods, for the work that you all are doing. Thanks for making time to meet with the community today and engage. And we look forward to hearing more about how things are going, especially with that first cohort that got accepted. Congratulations there. And with that, thank you, and we can close.
Ben, before we go really quick,
Yeah.
I'd like to thank the College of the Redwoods students that showed up today to support us. I saw you guys out there, at least your name's displayed. I won't call them out directly because I don't have permission. And I also appreciate Rebecca Silbert for showing up. She is one of our CDCR partners. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, and we will have more community conversations coming in the coming months. Bye, everyone. Bye, Margaret. Good to see you.
Thank you.